Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining me again. Today is International Women's Day. It is, to quote the BBC Newsround article on the subject, a day that celebrates the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women, whilst also calling for equality, where men and women are treated the same. The particular theme for this year's International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. And the idea behind it is that there are still things, so many things that need to change, and that things will not change unless someone chooses to challenge the way that things are now. I want to tell you a story tonight about someone in the Bible who challenged quite a few people one day at a party that she had not been invited to. This is the story of the woman with the alabaster jar. She stood outside the door of the large white house, listening to the murmuring of voices inside. Her heart was pounding. She felt hot and clammy. It seemed as though she'd been standing in that same position for hours. She knew what she wanted to do, but she couldn't quite find the courage to do it. Her mind ran through all the reasons why she should forget about the plan and go home. She hadn't been invited, she was a woman, nobody would want her there, she didn't deserve to be anywhere near Jesus. She shrugged her shoulders. It was that last one that really mattered. She'd watched Jesus from a distance during the past few days as he'd moved through the town of Bethany. She'd seen him do some amazing things, but she'd also heard him speak words that had brought hope to her troubled life. She closed her eyes and let her memory run back over the years of unhappiness. She'd made such a mess of life. She'd done so many things that had hurt her and other people too. And she wanted to change, but how could she? Everyone knew her. Everyone looked down their noses at her. She was someone to avoid, someone to keep your children away from. But somehow, she just knew that Jesus could change all that. She opened her eyes and shook her head. Usually she kept out of the way of religious leaders because they seemed to dislike her more than anyone else did. And yet now, here she was, waiting outside the home of one of those leaders. She wished she could simply knock on the door and ask to speak to Jesus, but she knew that Simon, who owned the house, would turn her away. Simon was just the same as everyone else. She swallowed hard and stepped towards the door. It wasn't true that Simon was the same as everyone else. Jesus was different. That was why she was here. He seemed to care for people who no one else thought were worth anything. She'd lived enough of the way that she'd lived her life. She didn't know how to change it, but somehow she knew that Jesus was her only hope. She eased the door open and crept inside. She found herself in a large room, dimly lit with lanterns. In the center of the room, a low table covered with food, around which men were reclining on their mats. She paused for a moment, scanning the room to see where Jesus was. And once she spotted him, she took a deep breath. It was now or never. She tiptoed forward and quietly knelt beside Jesus. At first, no one seemed to notice, but soon she became aware that the laughter and the talking had been replaced by angry whispers and then silence. She chose to ignore it. People might not understand what she was doing, but deep down she was sure that Jesus would understand her actions. Suddenly, she began to cry. All the years of sadness overwhelmed her. All those wasted years when she could have been doing something special with her life instead of messing it up. Tears poured down her cheeks, dripping to make clean trickles on Jesus' dusty feet. She quickly used her long hair to wipe them off, and her fingers fumbled to pull the stopper out of the bottle she was holding. The stopper came away, and a beautiful smell filled the air as she carefully poured the contents over Jesus' feet. The other men seated round the table watched in horror. Surely Jesus was going to stop the woman. This sort of behavior was not acceptable. Surely he wouldn't want her anywhere near him if he knew what sort of woman she was. Then Jesus' voice broke the silence. "Simon," he said, "Simon, I want to tell you a story." Jesus looked puzzled. It seemed a strange moment for a story, but everyone leant forward to listen. "There was once a man," Jesus began, "who lent 500 pieces of silver to one person and 50 pieces of silver to another. Unfortunately, after a time, neither of them was able to pay the money back. So the man forgave them both and cancelled their debt. Simon, which person do you think would be most grateful and love this man the most?" Simon looked relieved. That was an easy question to answer. "Well, the person who owed them more money," he said, "the one who had the greatest debt cancelled." Jesus nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on Simon. "That's right," he continued, turning to look at the woman who was still kneeling beside him. "Simon, when I came into your house, you didn't even offer me water to wash my feet. But this woman has washed my feet with her tears. When I arrived, you didn't kiss me. But this woman hasn't stopped kissing my feet and has even poured expensive perfume all over them. Simon, she has done so much wrong in her life, but I can see that she is sorry. I have forgiven her, and because she knows that I have forgiven her for so many things, she has shown that she loves me very, very much." From her position at Jesus' feet, the words she heard filled the woman's heart with happiness. Jesus understood. She could hear the men arguing about what Jesus had said, but it didn't matter to her. She was forgiven, and nothing could change that. She looked up. Jesus was speaking to her again, looking down into her eyes. "Go in peace," he said gently. She stood up. She had done what she came for, and her life would never be the same again. We don't really know what happened to that woman afterwards. And we don't know whether the other people who witnessed what she did were changed by her actions. But we do know that she challenged the expected norms of the day. And the fact that we are still talking about her 2,000 years later suggests that her challenge did indeed bring change and will continue to do so. As ever, I'm going to finish with a prayer. And as ever, if you'd like to make it your prayer, feel free to say Amen at the end. Loving God, we thank you that in your eyes, everyone is the same in that we are all loved by you. Help us where we see injustice and equality to be prepared to bring challenge and to work for a change. And please, Lord, be with those who are seeking to help women who are in places where simply being female is difficult. Amen. Thank you for joining me. See you again tomorrow, I hope. Bye for now.